It's terrible that after 50 years it is behind closed doors. And I've no intention that I've started to stop now. I'm determined to put an end to this. Terrible.
For decades, the diamond brooch existed only as a whispered entry in a sealed royal inventory, never photographed publicly, never loaned, and never mentioned by the palace. But when retired royal jeweler Edmund Vale finally opened the private ledger entrusted to him, he revealed something far more painful than a missing jewel. Diana had personally begged to wear it, and the Queen had ordered it locked away. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Edmund Vale did not open the ledger quickly. He rested his hands on its leather cover, drew a breath, and stared at the page he had protected for decades. In a recorded interview, the retired jeweler explained that he had spent more than 30 years maintaining pieces for Queen Elizabeth II and recording instructions within the royal collection. That collection was the crown's reserve of jewels, held as symbols of rank, duty, and dynastic continuity. The page concerned the Midnight Star. Edmund described an old-cut diamond surrounded by 12 smaller stones, created for Queen Mary and reserved for women considered central to the monarchy's future. Diana understood its meaning. She did not want to own the jewel. She asked to wear it once at a state banquet, believing the monarch's approval would show that she had finally been accepted as the future queen. His voice changed when he reached her handwriting. Edmund paused, pressed one finger against the margin, and read the request aloud. Diana's words were careful and respectful. She promised to return the brooch after the banquet. She asked for trust, not possession. Yet the answer beside her plea was brutally clear. Queen Elizabeth refused the request. The monarch personally ordered the Midnight Star removed from circulation, sealed inside a restricted vault, and marked, "Not to be released to the Princess of Wales." A restricted vault was a royal storage area requiring authorization, meaning no dresser, courtier, or family member could request the piece again. Edmund then revealed the detail that made the refusal impossible to dismiss as routine. Insurance was not the issue. The clasp was secure. Protocol had not forbidden the loan. A second handwritten notation connected the brooch to concern over Diana's growing independence and influence. The diamond had become part of a silent struggle over who carried the emotional future of the crown. Before closing the ledger, Edmund added a warning. The Queen had watched Diana admire the brooch years earlier. Both women remembered that moment. To understand why one diamond became a symbol of rejection, the story must move beyond the locked vault and into the private hopes Diana carried behind palace doors. Diana possessed famous jewels, wore historic tiaras, and appeared before the world as though every palace door had opened for her. Yet behind the brilliance was a woman who measured acceptance through small gestures the public never saw. To her, the Midnight Star was not simply another diamond. It represented the one thing rank and ceremony could not guarantee: the Queen's personal belief that Diana truly belonged beside the future king. Diana entered royal life young, watched and unprepared for the rules surrounding her. She came from an aristocratic family, but marriage placed her inside a system where every gesture carried meaning and every mistake became evidence against her. A tiara was not merely decoration. Within the royal household, it could signal trust, seniority, inheritance, and closeness to the monarch, turning a jewel into a silent verdict. Diana felt that difference after formal engagements. One evening, she sat with her dresser, removed a tiara, and asked why the Queen would loan her pieces meant for public duty while withholding the one brooch tied to the monarchy's future. Her dresser hesitated. Diana lowered her voice and admitted that crowds made her feel loved, but the palace made her feel examined. Every success deepened the distance. Diana's warmth drew admiration, yet her spontaneous choices, friendships, interviews, and emotional honesty created unease behind closed doors. She could win over thousands in an afternoon and still return home, wondering whether the family around her trusted her at all. That contrast wounded her more than open criticism, because it suggested affection outside the gates might count against her inside them. Edmund remembered the moment she asked him about the Midnight Star. In a recorded account preserved with his workshop notes, the retired jeweler recalled Diana visiting the royal jewel room and quietly asking whether the brooch had truly been intended for a future queen. The royal jewel room was the secure working area where pieces were inspected, selected, and prepared for official use. He answered carefully, telling her that tradition strongly suggested it was. Diana did not react with triumph. She looked down and asked whether tradition still meant anything when acceptance could be withheld. Edmund later explained that her request was personal, because she had chosen the banquet with care. Seating would place her beside Queen Elizabeth II, allowing both women to appear united after months of tension. Diana believed one shared symbol could say what private conversations had failed to repair. That hope might have remained a quiet ache. Instead, one ceremonial encounter turned the brooch into a test of loyalty. Diana reached toward the diamond, and the Queen's expression changed before either woman spoke. The point of no return came during the winter diplomatic reception at Windsor Castle in December 1985. Hundreds of guests saw polished smiles, perfect gowns, and an apparently united royal family. What they did not see was the moment Diana entered the jewel room before the reception, discovered the midnight star resting in an open case, and asked the Queen directly whether she might wear it that evening. Diana understood what the night demanded. The winter diplomatic reception was one of the monarchy's most formal gatherings, where ambassadors and senior officials were received under strict royal protocol. Every seat, greeting, and jewel carried a message about unity and authority. One wrong gesture could suggest division. One carefully chosen brooch could suggest trust. Edmund Vale stood beside the open case, checking a weakened clasp before the reception began. He later described the moment in his recorded account, explaining that the midnight star had been removed temporarily for inspection. Its appearance in Diana's path could have been chance, yet Edmund never dismissed the possibility that someone had wanted her to see it. Diana moved closer. She lifted the brooch carefully, held it near her gown, and turned toward Queen Elizabeth II. Her voice remained gentle. Would tonight be the right moment, she asked? The question carried years of uncertainty inside it. She was not simply requesting a diamond. She was asking whether the monarch finally trusted her to stand beside the crown without being treated as a threat. The Queen did not answer Diana directly. She looked toward Edmund and told him to close the case. Diana froze. The jeweler reached forward, but she returned the brooch with both hands before he could take it. She did not protest. She did not demand an explanation. Instead, she looked at the monarch and said she had hoped to make her proud. The words exposed the wound beneath the glamour, and for one brief second, even the Queen seemed unprepared for their weight. Diana left without another word. Queen Elizabeth remained beside the case and instructed Edmund that the midnight star was never to be offered again. Her voice stayed controlled, yet her fingers pressed against the lid until her knuckles turned pale. A senior courtier later told Edmund that the monarch feared Diana's popularity was creating a position beyond palace control. Allowing her to wear the brooch might confirm her as the emotional future of the crown. Several weeks later, Diana requested a private audience. The closed case had humiliated her in silence, but during the confrontation that followed, silence would no longer protect either woman. There were no photographers, no courtiers hovering within earshot, and no jeweled ceremony to soften the encounter. Diana entered the Queen's private sitting room carrying only a folded note and the humiliation she had endured at Windsor. What began as a request for understanding quickly became something far more dangerous, a direct confrontation over whether the monarchy saw her as its future or merely as a temporary figure to be controlled. Diana had arranged the meeting through the Queen's private secretary, the senior aide responsible for managing the monarch's appointments and correspondence. She refused to explain why she wanted the audience, because she feared palace officials would delay it, soften it, or stop it entirely. By the time she entered, Queen Elizabeth II was already waiting beside a writing desk, where the sealed restriction order for the Midnight Star had been prepared for transfer to the jewel vault. Diana placed her folded banquet request on the desk. She did not raise her voice. She simply asked why she could stand before millions as a representative of the crown, comfort strangers, endure public judgment, and carry the expectations of the monarchy, yet still be considered unworthy of wearing one brooch in the Queen's presence. The monarch answered carefully. She said royal jewels could not be used to settle emotional uncertainty. Diana looked at her and replied that the refusal had created the uncertainty. The diamond was no longer only a jewel. It had become proof that every public success could be applauded outside the palace and punished within it. Queen Elizabeth then said what Diana had feared. She believed the public might interpret the Midnight Star as an endorsement of the princess above Charles. The brooch could strengthen a separate royal identity around Diana, one driven by affection rather than hierarchy, and the institution could not allow that distinction to grow unchecked. Diana absorbed the words in silence. Then she told the queen that public affection was not something she had stolen from the crown. People responded to her because they recognized loneliness. The statement struck with brutal force. For the first time, the monarch's control slipped, and she stared at the folded note as though it carried an accusation she could not dismiss. The queen pressed a bell. An aide entered, and she ordered the restriction finalized immediately. Diana lifted her request from the desk, folded it once more, and left without pleading again. But the confrontation did not remain private for long. As Diana walked away with her dignity intact and her hopes shattered, the sealed order moved toward the vault, and Prince Philip moved toward the Queen. The Queen gave the order, but the decision did not remain a private disagreement between two women. Within hours, the Midnight Star became the subject of tense discussions involving Prince Philip, palace advisors, and the keepers of the royal collection. What appeared to be a question of jewelry had exposed an alarming division. Some believed Diana needed reassurance, while others feared that granting her the brooch would make her emotionally more powerful than the crown itself. Queen Elizabeth II held absolute authority over personal pieces within the royal collection. That collection contained jewels controlled by the monarch rather than automatically available to the family, and one written restriction could make a piece inaccessible even to senior royals. Traditional advisors supported her decision. They believed discipline protected the institution. Younger courtiers disagreed, arguing that Diana's popularity should be embraced before affection turned into resentment. Prince Philip entered the Queen's room after hearing what had happened. He picked up the restriction order, read it once, then read it again. The document formally prevented the Midnight Star from being requested or loaned. He placed it down and asked his wife whether locking away the brooch would also lock away Diana's anger. The Queen did not dismiss the question. She admitted that she felt trapped between sympathy for her daughter-in-law and fear for the monarchy. Diana followed emotion where the palace expected restraint, and each public success seemed to create a bond with the people that royal protocol could not control. The monarch feared that approving the brooch would look less like kindness and more like surrender. Philip warned that refusal carried its own message. He reminded her that Diana had not asked for ownership, she had asked for reassurance. The Queen answered that reassurance could not come at the cost of authority, but even she sounded less certain than before. Edmund Vale was summoned that evening. He later described the order in his recorded account, Judabachan Saiv, explaining that he was told to remove the Midnight Star from the normal jewel rotation. That rotation was the approved list of pieces available for official use. He replaced its velvet presentation case with an unmarked storage box, stripping the brooch of its ceremonial identity. Before the box was sealed, Philip asked Edmund whether the restriction could ever be reversed. The jeweler answered carefully. Only the sovereign, or a future sovereign, could release it. Diana soon discovered that the jewel had not merely been denied to her. It had vanished from the selection books she was allowed to consult. The refusal was now permanent on paper, but the deliberate disappearance made her understand how completely the palace intended to silence the episode. Diana had prepared herself to hear no. She had not prepared herself to discover that the palace had removed every visible trace of the brooch, as though her request had become something shameful. When her dresser opened the latest jewel catalog and found the Midnight Star missing, Diana did not rage. She sat down, touched the empty space on the page, and realized that the Queen's answer had extended far beyond a single evening. Diana learned the truth while preparing for another state occasion. Her dresser placed the approved selection book before her, and noticed that an entire catalog number had disappeared. The working inventory was the official list of jewels available for royal use, and removing a piece from it meant dressers, equerries, and household staff could no longer request it through normal channels. The brooch had not merely been refused, it had been erased. Diana closed the catalog slowly. She dismissed her staff and remained alone beside the gown she had once imagined wearing, with the Midnight Star. The room fell silent, but the silence felt heavier than anger. She had asked for one gesture of trust. Instead, the palace had made certain she could never ask again. Charles entered later and immediately sensed something had changed. Diana looked at him and asked whether he had known about the restriction. He did not answer at once. That pause told her everything. Her husband had known, the Queen had decided, and no one had believed she deserved the truth. Charles finally admitted that advisors feared the brooch would intensify public comparisons between Diana and Queen Elizabeth II. He said the decision had been institutional, designed to protect the monarchy from another symbol the public might interpret too strongly. Diana answered without raising her voice. "Institutions do not close jewel cases," she told him. "People do." Charles tried to explain that the palace feared her popularity was becoming larger than her role. Diana replied that affection was not rebellion. The more he defended the decision, the more clearly she understood that the diamond had become punishment for being loved. Edmund Vale received orders to destroy Diana's written request after updating the maintenance record. He did not obey. In his documented workshop account, the jeweler later explained that he folded the note and hid it inside the ledger, believing the truth might one day need to survive the palace's silence. Years passed. Diana died without wearing the midnight star, yet her words remained beside it, hidden from the family and protected by one man's conscience. Diana never wore the brooch, but her plea endured, waiting for William, the son who would one day possess the power to decide what her pain had truly meant. The turning point did not come during a state ceremony or a royal announcement. It came inside Edmund Vale's workshop, where Prince William sat across from the aging jeweler, with no aides, no secretaries, and no institutional language between them. Edmund opened the ledger to Diana's folded request. William recognized his mother's handwriting immediately, and after reading the final sentence, he could not speak. Edmund had contacted William privately years after Diana's death, because he believed the prince deserved to know why the midnight star had vanished. He also believed the hidden request had outlived the secrecy surrounding it. The royal collection was the body of jewels controlled by the sovereign, and an official review could have turned the meeting into another palace process. William refused that path. He arrived without a formal entourage and asked that the conversation remain personal. William unfolded the letter carefully. Diana had written that she did not want to challenge the family or embarrass the queen. She wanted to be seen as a woman trying to serve the people she had married into, not as a disruptive outsider who needed to be contained. The future king read those lines twice. Each word made the old refusal feel less like protocol and more like judgment. William placed the letter down and walked away from the table. He told Edmund that his mother had spent years believing the rejection proved she would never be accepted, no matter how deeply the public loved her. Diana had carried that pain quietly. Now her son understood that the brooch had become a symbol of every door she believed the palace had closed against her. Edmund then revealed another detail from his documented maintenance records. Queen Elizabeth II had inspected the sealed midnight star twice after the restriction was issued. The monarch had asked whether the clasp remained secure, yet she never ordered the brooch released. To the jeweler, those visits suggested doubt. The queen had returned to the diamond, but she had never returned to Diana. William looked back at the ledger and asked whether the restriction could still be reversed. Edmund explained that, as heir, he could formally request reconsideration. The heir was the person next in line to inherit the throne, but only the reigning sovereign could authorize the final release. William took a copy of Diana's letter and left the workshop with quiet resolve. He did not return to his office. He traveled directly to confront Charles. For the first time, the midnight star was no longer trapped between Diana and the late queen. Its fate now rested between a grieving son and a father forced to face the cost of royal silence. The secret escaped the palace before Charles and William could settle it privately. Edmund's recorded testimony reached the press, and within hours the midnight star became the most discussed jewel Diana had never worn. The public did not see an argument over diamonds. They saw a young woman asking for acceptance, an older monarch refusing it, and a palace so determined to bury the moment that even the brooch disappeared. The palace responded with restraint. Its statement described jewel allocations as private decisions made according to established custom, meaning the internal rules used to decide who could wear pieces from the royal collection. But it avoided Diana's handwritten plea entirely. That silence mattered, because the story was no longer about procedure. It was about whether the monarchy had knowingly turned a woman's need for belonging into a question of control. Broadcasters moved quickly. They reconstructed the history of the Midnight Star, traced its connection to Queen Mary, and explained that the brooch had long symbolized royal continuity, the idea that authority passes through generations without interruption. The more the public understood its meaning, the more painful the refusal became. Diana had not chosen a random jewel. She had chosen a symbol of acceptance. William watched the first televised report without speaking. A presenter read part of his mother's request and called the brooch the diamond that became a locked door. The prince lowered his eyes but did not leave the room. He had spent years hearing the palace explain Diana through duty and difficulty. Now the country was hearing her own words. Charles reacted differently. Advisors urged him to dismiss the story as an old family matter, but the king refused. He warned that ignoring Diana's pain once had created the scandal, and ignoring it again would make the damage permanent. His frustration exposed what the palace statement concealed. The family knew the public had understood the emotional truth. The next morning, one front page carried the headline, "Diana's Forbidden Diamond." Beneath it appeared an empty velvet case beside a photograph of the princess at the 1985 diplomatic reception. The image captured the entire story without explanation: beauty, absence, and rejection. That evening, a crowd gathered at the gates of Kensington Palace. One woman placed a small crystal brooch among the flowers with a handwritten card. "You never needed their permission to shine." Charles saw the message. William saw it too. Hours later, the king summoned his son and placed the original restriction order between them. The world had delivered its judgment, but only one decision could turn the brooch from evidence of rejection into a final act of recognition. Charles did not defend the past when William entered the room. He placed the Queen's restriction order on the table, read Diana's handwritten plea once more, and acknowledged that preserving royal authority had come at the cost of a woman's sense of belonging. Then, in a decision that ended 4 decades of silence, he signed the release allowing the Midnight Star to leave the restricted vault permanently. Charles and William met alone at Windsor, with the original order, Diana's request, and Edmund Vale's maintenance ledger arranged between them. The ledger was the jeweler's official record of repairs, restrictions, and private instructions connected to the royal collection. Together, the 3 documents told the same painful story from different sides. Authority had spoken, Diana had pleaded, and one witness had refused to let the truth disappear. William did not want the brooch handed to another royal woman. He argued that placing it on someone else at a state occasion would turn his mother's pain into another contest over rank. The diamond had already been used as a symbol of approval and rejection. It could not be allowed to wound another woman in Diana's name. Charles lowered his voice. He admitted that the family had repeatedly mistaken Diana's need for reassurance as a demand for power. The king said they had feared her influence when they should have understood her loneliness. William answered that his mother's deepest wound was not being denied a jewel. It was being treated as dangerous every time she asked to feel valued. The monarch signed the release and removed his glasses. He told his son that the crown could not rewrite what happened, but it could stop protecting the silence that followed. The restricted vault was a secure royal storage area, accessible only through direct authorization. For decades, that barrier had kept the Midnight Star hidden. Now the order holding it there was gone. Edmund opened the vault in William's presence. He lifted the unmarked box and revealed the brooch for the first time in decades. Then he placed Diana's preserved letter beside it, finally joining the jewel with the truth the palace had tried to separate from it. William made the final decision. The Midnight Star would enter a permanent memorial display dedicated to Diana's humanitarian legacy, accompanied by the honest account of why she requested it and why it was withheld. It would never again serve as a reward, a weapon, or a measure of royal worth. Diana had not begged for diamonds. She had begged for recognition. The vault closed again, but this time it closed empty, leaving her truth in the light, and the monarchy changed by the acceptance it had once refused her. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.